look at me, short circuit, you make me lose control.
Imagine a machine designed and programmed to write and record the perfect pop song. Now imagine it falling apart, like a wire went bust or something in the machine is just malfunctioning and everything is beginning to sound warped and manic. We would have Pop 2.
This isn't the first time Charli XCX's music has been weird. In fact, some may argue that it has been weird since her first album, True Romance. Sure, on the surface it seems like your typical set of hooky, sugary, sweet synth-based pop tunes like You and In the Dark and Nuclear Romance, but even then, these songs have strange and actually quite brave, risky intricacies to them that make them stand out a bit more from your average pop artist who just dabbles in the trendy sounds of electro-pop. Thing is, most will not think of Charli XCX as a very colourful and creative personality in the field of modern pop, because their first impressions may have been built up badly by the hook on a song by Iggy Azalea, or Icona Pop, or perhaps one of her catchy but tamer hits like Boom Clap. These songs or hooks are not necessarily awful depending on how tolerant your joy receptors are, but they only represent the tip of the very glamorous iceberg for Charli's music, especially now as she continues to put out music associated with the PC music camp. Her previous EP in 2016, Vroom Vroom, was released initially to polarizing results, but was soon swept up by fans of experimental music and perhaps some of her more open-minded fans. It was an album so glossed up and even campy, produced by Sophie, whose bombastic instrumentals sound like beats made from materials you'd find in your recycling bin. Charli's lyrics and delivery suggested fun, but in a far more satirical way, like they were mocking commercialism, yet at the same time embracing it with open arms. I find this fascinating, especially with many of the PC music artists who toy with that kind of image in their music. They ramp up the consumerism and commercialism in pop music to ridiculous levels of camp and bombast, that it sounds as if the music is almost a logical progression from where pop music is now.
I know that people write off PC music as a record label that just does pop music ironically, but that actually seems like too much of a dismissal of what makes them so interesting in the first place. There's that, and the fact that there is honestly nothing more pop right now than what PC music is doing. Why else do you think this new mixtape is called Pop 2?
I'm not saying that Charli XCX or any PC music artist will inevitably be a trendsetter for future pop music or anything like that, but who knows? However, I am saying that from what we can hear of Electro-Pop now, despite how wild and unhinged and outlandish the presentation may seem on Pop 2, this is not as far off as one might initially think. This all seems like a very big off-topic tangent in preparation for covering this new mixtape in a review, but I genuinely think that discussing what this music is aiming for is essential to understanding why so many people are kind of on board with it. Last year, Charli XCX released 2 mixtapes, Number 1 Angel and Pop 2. Now, while both releases seem to be received quite positively, I wasn't a fan of the former. Number 1 Angel, while it did sport very colourful production as expected, offered very little in the way of good songwriting and interesting presentation, in my opinion. The hooks got repetitive and annoying really quickly, and its only real standout was its closer, Lip Gloss, which sported a sparkly beat and raunchy lyrics from both Charli and the queen of the explicit, Cupcake. However, Pop 2 was a mixtape that seemed to hit more targets than it did miss them, with a far more unhinged and unpredictable veneer. First thing, Charli is using auto-tune more frequently now. I understand that she uses it now as her singing voice hasn't quite become so flash over time.
Well, I use auto-tune now when I sing because my pitch is just so bad from being in the studio and trying to be Kanye all the time, and it's like a fun effect for me to play with.
But now relying on auto-tune for her singing actually opens up a lot more doors for her to experiment behind. A lot of people tend to just dismiss auto-tune as just a lazy tool, but actually there are ways in which artists can use it for very interesting results. Surely if you enjoy the way an artist like James Blake uses it, then you should very well be open-minded to the way an artist like Young Thug or Charli XCX could use it. Hearing a track like Tears may be off-putting, especially combined with how slow and syrupy it is, but what makes it shine is how increasingly volatile her singing becomes as the song pushes forward, as if she's spiraling out of control. That and the hook is catchy, of course, but there is a little more thought put into it than just the hook, especially considering its ending, which sparkles like fizzy lemonade. You You might even listen to a track like Porsche and think the product placement in the lyrics is so blatant it's ridiculous. Yes, by this point in the mixtape it should be obvious that this is only part of the joke, but it seems less like Charli XCX is against commercialism, but instead openly embracing it. I feel like this not only makes the song more fun, but also gives you less of an excuse to find it abhorrent, because Charli XCX is just making it so clear that it's all in the name of good fun. You can kind of let loose and just, I guess, rave to it.
Cause I've been fantasizing about a Porsche. Get that dough.
And that's the thing, none of this is deep. Yes, there is some semblance of irony in this image, and in fact the satire is undeniable. However, to dismiss the entire thing as an ironic joke is a bit silly, because at the end of the day, all that these artists are really doing is just releasing some fun, catchy pop songs. It's not a deep thing, it's just a fascinating image and an aesthetic that they front their music with. As fellow PC music artist GFOTY says, it just wouldn't be as fun if they were doing everything ironically. How boring would that be? In actually talking about the songs that I liked in as much detail as I can, I prefer the second half to the first half, as most of the songs on that second half have more punch, and the first half really does have more of the slower jams here, as well as some of the least interesting, the one with Tov Lo specifically. Not that the opener Backseat fails as a pop song, in fact it is a good one, sporting an angular but catchy melody on the chorus, and featuring the dynamic duo pairing of Charli and Carly. Like, that doesn't always happen, let's embrace it while we can. However, it is just that this song doesn't seem to adventure anywhere, and also their voices become a little too indistinct from one another. However, once we get to the track I Got It, this thing accelerates and will not stop. I'm talking about how I Got It features a beat inspired by trap, but has percussion so much more creatively flavored.
Big tits, double D's, no silicone and no saline. Jealous of me, envious hoes in the all green.
Also the way that Brooke Candy and Cupcake bring their trademark raunchiness in their verses, and the way that Charli delivers the repetitious but stupidly catchy hook in a croaky, seductive voice.
I got it, I got it, I got it, I got it. I got it, 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 I got it. I got it, I got it, I got it, yeah.
It's a song so dynamic and poppy that I can't help but love it, and the unexpected Spanish singing from Pablo, that's a nice touch. In fact, speaking of other notable guest features, we are met with experimental rap figure Mickey Blanco, who spits a killer verse. Even Jay Park sings a fair bit, among others. But one of the most worth spotlighting is the eccentric Tommy Cash. In fact, so eccentric that I don't quite fancy his verse as much. I mean, don't get me wrong, he brings the attitude and campiness that Pop 2 is practically begging for, but there's just something a little bit off-putting about how hammy and overblown he is, I suppose. I guess it's not for me, necessarily.
There's no Wi-Fi in forest, I found a better connection. No mirrors nearby, but I see a better reflection. I was fucked by the nature, we didn't use protection. Made a lot of trees, they are now in a book section.
This mixtape is a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it a lot more than Number One Angel for its creativity and its willingness to fly a bit further off the wall. I do know that Charli is planning a release of her next proper studio album, and I hope that she continues to flip pop tropes on their head in twisted and crazy ways, while still setting out to do the one thing she is definitely good at, making a catchy banger. But for now, this will suffice. I'm sure this tape is bound to annoy quite a lot of people, but it really utterly entertained me, and I am thinking a 7 out of 10.